All right, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm going to tell you honestly, I'm really bad at writing slides. Actually, the first time I ever talked about PayFi was here in Hong Kong last April. And again, they're like, Lily, you got to get us slides. And I literally wrote them 30 minutes before. And that's where we started about talking about PayFi. That's where Richard and I met. And the rest is history nearly 1 year later. All right, so this time I thought, well, in honor of that, I've got to write some new slides. I did that about 30 minutes ago. So here we are. Thank you for your attention, patience, and understanding. Okay, so building an on-chain economy. I've been doing this for about 11 years. And what is one of the major critiques of all of crypto, right? It's just all about speculation. And there's no use case other than speculation. And therefore, it's all just sort of one version of a scam or another. That is what the detractors of crypto always say. And if you look at the longer term price chart, well, the little bump on the left is the ICO era. And then there was that's a pretty good head and shoulders pattern there, 21, 22. That was NFTs, that was gaming. And then you've got the long winters in between. And then a bit of a return in 24 and 25, this time with meme coins, with the election, with Bitcoin getting to 100K. But the critique the entire time has been there's nothing but speculation, right? So what it is, it's basically a Beanie Baby cycle, one after the other. And that was Bitcoin back in 2013, the Dentacoin, the good old Dentacoin days, for those of us who remember $1.5 billion Dentacoin back in 2017, the NFT era, and now what we have before us, which is, I guess, we're living through what's going on with the meme coin ecosystem. All right, so that's not what crypto said it was going to be doing, right? Bitcoin white paper says peer-to-peer electronic cash system, doesn't say digital gold, also doesn't say kind of digital beanie babies. So what got me interested in trying to think about how this all comes together is, and where I concluded, is that the transactional economy is necessary for completing the on-chain economy. Why? Because what happens in each of these cycles is that you have this incredible sort of explosion of speculation that leverages the liquidity of the tens, now hundreds, eventually billions of people that can access on-chain. And, let's be honest, everyone likes to gamble a little bit. And that creates these huge spikes and drops. And what happens is not only do, let's call it speculative asset prices drop after a cycle, but then there's nothing else really to do on-chain, so people leave, right? And that is where you get these troughs. And so, what the transactional economy does, ideally, hopefully, that's what we're here to do, is to create more reasons and value to actually stay on chain, because there's things to do other than speculate on beanie babies in the meantime, right? And so that is why I became interested in Solana about 4 years ago, because I saw it as the peer-to-peer electronic cash system as articulated by Bitcoin, the movement, is something that Bitcoin, the protocol, basically decided not to do in 2016, 2017. That was a very smart choice for Bitcoin, actually, because I'll tell you, it's a whole lot harder to be a technology platform. You constantly have to build things. You constantly have to innovate on tech. It's just a lot more complex, and it's a lot more work than being the one person on the podium or the one ecosystem on the podium that can be digital gold, store value, where the only two calls to action are to buy and then to do nothing else, right? So that is the privileged position that Bitcoin, as kind of the grandfather of all of this, gets to have. But then the question is, who's going to be doing the rest of that? Who's going to be that technology platform for decentralized applications, facilitating a global medium of exchange to provide that global financial infrastructure? So in my mind, the complement to the vision of Bitcoin is the Solana ecosystem, right? And everyone after Bitcoin, I think, is competing for this space. But as I look around, I don't see any other ecosystems that have the talent, the liquidity, and also just kind of the raw technology to really power this. Okay, so that's where we started. Bitcoin, the movement, right? And how much of this the Bitcoin protocol has chosen to sort of not make it its core thing. And so I think that the DeFi world, which is what we typically call DeFi, is really around trading, right? And what that means is fundamentally the DeFi world is around you trade, you send in one token and you get another token back. That's a trade. And the transactional economy, which is that you actually send a token to settle a goods or service, that's the part that doesn't really exist at scale in crypto yet. And that is what we are collectively here to be changing, right? And so the narrative around this has typically been some version of, well, existing payment processing platforms cost anywhere between 1.5% and 3% with a fixed and a variable component. And this is something that with stablecoins, you can bring that cost down very substantially because the cost of just paying for an on and off ramp as those are being built out in the world is probably 10 bips or even less, right? So oftentimes the value proposition of this industry has been articulated as look at the dramatic cost savings from 300 bips down to 10. And that is one side of the cost of the existing kind of payments ecosystem that we're in. But I think there's this other column of the cost of time, right? And this to me is actually what's much more significant. And what this opens up in my mind is this not just a story about cost, but this is a story about new profit pools, right? If you think about the value of saving, let's call it 2 or 3 days on average for essentially every payment that gets processed, and you think about, the velocity of that over the course of the year, the value in saving that amount of time is something that far exceeds whatever your T-bills are going to be paying for you. And also, this is a market that is only accessible if you can bring things on chain, right? Because that's the only place where you can open up for basically everyone on the internet that has access to the internet, which is, total market 5.5 billion people today, and their associated liquidity, the ability to participate in these on-chain markets for $10, $100, $1 million, right? So this is a market around profit pools based around sort of the efficiency of payments that does not exist today. It's not about sort of 300 bips of interchange or 150 bips of interchange, but it's really sort of the value that gets unlocked by saving all the time on these transactions. Okay, and so now, clearly we're in this new macro environment. And I think that also means for stablecoins, new audience, right? What is this audience? Well, it's been well articulated many times before. It is the people who don't have access to dollar markets, don't have access to digital dollars, and also live in high inflation economies. And if you total all of that up, it's about 50 countries around the world that have inflation over 5% in the current period. And total, that's about 1 billion people, right? That's not even counting the next sort of multiple billion people who are living between 3 and 5%, including the entirety of the United States at the moment. And so what this means is, well, there's always been this kind of talk about this is a market for digital dollars. And it's taken us as an industry a while to get there because you've got to have liquidity in stablecoins. There's got to be wallet accessibility. There's got to be sort of consumer readiness. Okay, that's taken us a while to build. But also in this new macro environment, you've probably already seen some of the discussion around in the US an embrace of stablecoins because the US sees stablecoins proliferation, which are likely to be predominantly in dollars around the world, to be strategic to the US's purposes, right? With this new administration, they see stablecoins as potentially even being able to reduce long-term interest rates, which is a core kind of strategic necessity of the United States right now by increasing demand for underlying T-bills. And also there's the broader sort of objective around continuing US dominance in relevant technologies, right? So there's renewed interest from the source of it all right now in dollarizing many of these markets, and that's something that becomes an opportunity for the folks in this room. All right, so what's next and new in PayFi? Some of the things that we're interested in seeing coming and also interested in sort of seeing be advanced in the industry as a whole, there's going to be an incredible amount of asset diversity. We already have quite a diversity of stablecoins. We're oriented towards different parts of the market, the ones that people know, and quite a number, for example, Nick with Agora, that are doing really cool things. I do think that as there's more and more demand around the world for digital dollars, the breadth and the proliferation of on and off ramps is something we're all collectively going to have to invest quite a bit in. And also the introduction of digitally native integrated economies, both human and machine. What do we mean by that? Well, we've already started to see some convergence between DPIN and PayFi, right, where you can use on-chain financing mechanisms to finance the purchase and the monetization of notes. That's pretty interesting. And also with the AI agent craze, essentially AI agents become the logic with which you can facilitate machine-to-machine payments. And so you add all of those things together and you start to introduce entirely new autonomous payment and financing use cases that for sure cannot exist outside of crypto. And I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting and pretty crazy things that are happening on that end. And back to some themes that people have talked about for a long time, right? Identity and privacy. The critique of why is there, insufficient identity kind of layer attestation services on chain is because, well, there's no one ever really cares about identity, and there's no kind of adoption momentum for that. That's something that we within the PayFi movement, I think, can help change, right? Because now there's enough value and there's enough reason to be using this, whether it's because of yield, access to new investment opportunities, upside opportunities, that would be the basis for identity and privacy. Lastly, this is a new one, OCO on-chain offerings, but we'll talk about that one next time. And then lastly, why did we always start talking about PayFi here in APAC? Why APAC matters so much for PayFi? Well, it's the size of the market. 50% of trade roughly comes through both East and Southeast Asia, and also 30% of the population lives here, and that's not a surprise to anyone, just the robustness of the export economy here and the manufacturing and so on and so forth. But then also, more importantly, is I think that East Asia in particular has the deepest payments talent in this generation. If you look at who's really innovated on creating new consumer financial experiences, it's really been the super apps of WeChat, Alipay, Grab, and then also even UnionPay, the banking network, and just seeing that proliferation over the last 10 or 15 years has been incredible. So here in crypto, we're always looking to see where sort of A-plus talent pools intersect with what's topical within crypto. And I think this is something where you have really distinctive, deep experience payments talent here, particularly in East Asia, that you really don't see anywhere else in the world. So this is another big reason why APAC really matters for PayFi. Anyway, so in conclusion, this is what it's always been about. It's been the vision of Bitcoin and who can complement that original vision of Bitcoin. I think this is basically the direction the world is moving. We're going to have Bitcoin, $2+ trillion store value asset, and Solana is being the company global financial rails to do all the other stuff. So there we are. Thanks, guys.
Give her another big round of applause, everybody.